All right, so we're going to get started here on Chapter 7. Section is Natural Gas 7.7 on page 236. Where do we get natural gas? Where does it come from? What's underground? Underground, okay. Is it something that we have to target, or is it something that's just there?
It's byproduct of
Yeah.
oil drilling.
Yeah, typically it's a byproduct of oil drilling because what's the problem? What's the main problem with natural gas? If I'm out in the middle of nowhere in North Dakota and I have an oil well and I've got natural gas coming up, what are my problems with natural gas?
Flammable.
Yeah, it's flammable, downright explosive, right? And if I want to make it a usable product, what do I have to do with it? I have to capture it. I have to concentrate it, which is compressed, and then transport it. I guess you could not compress it and send it through a pipeline, but are you going to run a pipeline to every single? Typically, what they do on those wells is, they're collected each one and then transported by truck to a central location, and then use the pipeline to do it, to transport it, over any distance or anything. And for years, the cost was not worth it. Natural gas just wasn't worth that much. So we didn't capture it. And you drive by the oil fields at night, and you see those flames going all over the place. All they're doing is burning off the natural gas. Same thing you see out here when you drive past the landfill, although it hasn't been going the past couple of weeks. I'm not sure. Brad and I were commenting on that. We're not sure what's going on with that. All the methane is coming off the landfill. Kind of the same thing. It comes off. What am I going to do with it? Well, you can capture about $100,000 for a system for the landfill, or you can just have a nice, pretty flame. So they just use the flame. But now there's a huge market for it, and we use it. It's great for heating. How is it cost-wise compared to other petroleum products?
About half.
Yeah, it's probably half if you're close to the source. I know when I lived in Wasilla, Alaska, just outside of Anchorage, they have all the oil wells out in Cook Inlet, and McKiskey's the name of the town, and they have a pipeline going to Anchorage. I could heat my 2,500 square foot house with natural gas for about $50 a month in the wintertime, and that's when it's 30 below zero, constant the entire month. And that included heating my two-car garage to 50 degrees in the wintertime as well. So cost-wise, it's very, very cheap if you're local. How do we transport it? What are some of our ways of transport? We talked about pipelines. You can use a semi-truck, but how much can you haul on a semi-truck? Not very much. We want to ship large quantities of it. How would we ship? What are our two options for large quantities? Cargo ships. Yeah, I guess you could do it with trains. Good point. With rail cars. So I guess there are multiple ways. Or pipeline. Pipelines have the advantage they're protected. They're underground typically, and relatively safe until something goes wrong. You guys remember the thing that happened in San Francisco a few years ago? PG&E had, I think it was like a 36-inch pipeline, natural gas pipeline, had a bad weld in it, had a leak, and something triggered that and blew up a whole city block. And then you got a really nasty fire and all kinds of problems.
Blew up back by my parents live in Pennsylvania. Whole 8-acre field just
Gone. Yeah, it's nasty, nasty, powerful stuff, which is why we use it for energy. It's a great source for energy, and it works really well for heating and whatever else you want to do, as long as you can control it. How about these big cargo ships? Can any cargo ship haul natural gas? No, they're very specialized. If you ever see a ship, they'll normally have 3 or 4 big round tanks, just it's like a giant, soccer ball on the deck of the ship. There's 4 of them, typically on a big 600 to 800 foot freighter. And that's where they store liquefied natural gas, so it's under pressure. If that little pipeline blew up in Pennsylvania wiped out a whole 8-acre area, what would happen if one of those big LNG tankers went off in San Francisco Bay? It would be, I mean, you're talking the scale of nuclear explosion, as big as those are. With all the safeguards and everything, it's still, we're very hesitant to transport it just because of how volatile it is and how dangerous it can be. But if you can capture it, it's really, really useful, right? And I think we're kind of getting to that point now where we don't see an endless supply of all these resources. We don't see an endless supply of natural gas. And if there's money to be made, we'll make the investment, you know, and figure out a way that we can do that. So they talk here about, you know, they were doing town gas even in the 1960s in the UK, which we don't really have an equivalent of. We didn't really do town gas ever here. But then once they figured out the oil fields and they figured out the North Sea had a ton of oil in it and they were going to drill for it there, now all of a sudden they were fairly close by access to natural gas and they can run a pipeline there to the UK and utilize it. So there you go. In 10 years, starting in 1967, 40 million gas appliances, about 13 million customers. Costs about 5 billion pounds, which I'm not sure what their pound conversion is.
So 2.2.
So what is it?
2.2.
2.2. Okay, so pretty expensive conversions. But what happens with say I'm heating with electricity generated by coal? We already talked about coal and all the pollution issues that we have with that. What comes out of natural gas when I burn it? Anybody ever burn natural gas in their house? Or propane? What do you get out of it? You get out CO2, which obviously is going to come out of any combustion, right? And water. Literally, early 80s, my parents put in a Lennox pulse furnace, and it's so weird when this thing fires up. It's just a PVC exhaust pipe that comes from the furnace and goes like right out to, you know, your foundation. When the furnace would kick on, it sounded like there was a car pulling in the driveway. It just sounds like a car. That's the pulse. You know, it sounds like an engine running. But the only thing that came out of the exhaust pipe that you could see in the wintertime, it was steam and then water. Water just pouring out of that pipe. Lots and lots of water. But that's really the only two things of combustion. So it comes out very, very clean. A lot of energy in it and just very clean burning. So, you know, other than the CO2, so it's a huge advantage compared to heating with coal, heating with wood, any, you know, biomass.
Does that water have any pollutants in it?
I don't believe it does. I'm not sure. I've never. Yeah, I don't know that I'd put my water tap off of it permanently, but I don't imagine.
I'm sure it can be purified pretty simply.
Oh, I'm sure. It's going to be some residual. I imagine there's probably other residuals. You're not getting pure natural gas. You know, you're getting some other little mixtures in there. So there might be some other chemicals,
But it does not have all the data that will purify itself.
yeah. And actually, you know, it ran out into my yard and it didn't kill the grass. So I'm going to assume it's relatively clean. There might be trace amounts of other stuff. But it's really, natural gas is 90% methane. And if you look at box 7.7, it talks about combustion of it. You got CH4, which is a very, very simple hydrocarbon, right? And when it burns, it's taking in oxygen from the atmosphere. So for each one of those CH4 molecules burned, it's using 2 oxygen molecules. As they split up, you're left with CO2 and 2 H2Os. So technically it should be pure water, but that's assuming you have pure CH4 going in there. How do they measure natural gas? I mean, it's a gas, how could you...
100 pound, right?
Yeah.
Per gallon.
Actually, typically what you see is per therm. They measure it by cubic meters, but when you talk about the actual, typically when you hear people talk about natural gas, they're talking about a therm. A therm is 100,000 BTUs. And BTU is something that's like, okay, hey, we're familiar with that. We know what BTUs are. So 1/3 is 100,000 BTUs, and I'm in box 7.8 now, which equals out to 29.3 kilowatt hours, and we know what that is, 105.5 megajoules, or 2.7 cubic meters of natural gas. So you can measure it by volume, or you can measure it by its energy content. And then you get into your tons of oil equivalent, because we always want to compare it to another source. So what's our supply of natural gas compared to crude oil, quantity-wise? Any ideas?
Well, obviously we got a lot more gas than we do oil.
Yeah, for sure.
We're the largest producer of gas, and I know we're not the largest producer of oil.
Right, and it all depends on where you're at and what the conditions are, what the geology is, what kind of oil it is. You know, each one, it's kind of like when we talked about coal, and you talk about that. We have a standard fixed value for coal, kind of the same way with natural gas. When they drill, they assume there is going to be natural gas there. It's the lighter ends of any type of petroleum product. But how much is there totally depends on the geology and how accessible it is. Can you capture natural gas anywhere?
Sometimes we can go for it pretty much anywhere.
If you wanted it bad enough, yes, you can. Do we ever target just natural gas? Not right now. There may come a day when we do, but yeah,
On ice fields, northern Russia, Greenland.
they're trying to target just natural gas.
Yeah, where there are methane pockets inside of the ice.
Okay, yeah.
And large explosions happen all over the place because of the methane pockets are being compressed so much. Huge craters in the ice fields.
Nice.
I'm trying to target them.
So figure out a way to tap into that. It's already pretty compressed,
That
right?
sounds a little dangerous though, going out there trying to set up a rig when you got it compressing, spontaneously combusting.
Trying to think of where I saw that. There's
That's not
something.
cool and you start getting it out.
I don't want to be the guy that goes down there and pumps all of that.
last year.
Okay.
Little kid.
All over the place. It was made headlines of European markets. And it was
I think I saw about that. I know there's another place where there's, I forget what they call it, like the gates of hell or something, but there's a hole in the ground where there is natural gas leaking up, and this is like the eternal flame. This has been going for years. You can't put it out. You can't really do anything with it. It just burn off natural gas. So it's all over. Where does natural gas come from? Decaying biomass, right? So could there be decaying biomass in ice? But typically it's not in the ice, it would be below the ice and then bubbling up through. And then as the ice gets thicker and thicker, I guess it's compressing it and gets to the point where it can't be compressed anymore. And
Ice is always moving.
yeah,
Ice is always moving, so I could see how that could probably lose and get a lot of different pockets.
and it kind of works just like you would reach a point where it works kind of like a diesel engine, where you don't even need a spark. It just has enough compression. There's enough friction between those molecules to self-ignite and go boom. So kind of weird that you can have fire in the middle of ice, but pretty cool when you think about it. Let's exploit it. It's cool. You know, it's going to be cool. All right, so we talked about global distribution. They're in figure 718. As far as the one on the left is natural gas reserves, and the one on the right is actual production. You see, we don't have in North America. There's not very many natural gas reserves. Although that's something that we're discovering all the time, and who knows how truthful that really is.
It's from 2010.
Yeah.
So when
So
they talk about a reserve, does that mean stuff that's been untapped as well as?
untapped, we know it's there, but we haven't tapped it yet.
Okay.
I know they're drilling all over like northern Montana. There's wells all over my uncle's ranch and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And he sells the gas to whichever power company is up there.
Okay.
They're constantly drilling for it everywhere, so they're looking for it.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think the reserves are known quantities that haven't been tapped into at all. Middle East would make sense, and obviously that's a very rich petroleum area. Soviet Union, we just heard about the natural gas in the ice, so that's obviously an issue. And it's kind of ironic that North America is leading the way in production of natural gas, even though they have one of the lowest numbers of reserves.
And
Middle
those Middle East
concentrates on their oil.
Yeah, Middle East concentrating on oil.
that's what I was going to say, 1/3, just 1/3 of the production compared to the reserves. They're obviously putting their time and energy in something else.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Middle East is definitely focused on crude oil. Soviet Union, I think, probably is focused on whatever makes money. Same way we are, same way it is in the United States. We're focused on what makes money. Actually, there, if you look at bottom page 242, you can see one of those LNG tankers we were talking about. They have to be insulated, those tanks. The inspection process is insane on those. I used to do that in my former life, in my career in the Coast Guard. And in the United States, anybody know how many ports we have that can accept LNG? I think there's like 5 total. I know Houston can. I know Boston can. I know LA, well actually Long Beach can. I think San Francisco would actually be Oakland or Richmond, one of those northern, suburbs of San Francisco. There's only a couple places because the stuff is so hazardous to deal with. And that was a huge issue after 9/11. They probably for about 2 years, they didn't get any tankers into Boston at all. And what they would have to do is they would have to sit out like 20 miles offshore. They'd have the whole harbor cleared, basically shut down, like, okay, you can come in. They'd be escorted all the way in by Navy Coast Guard ships. Go to the pier, they'd have security the whole time that thing's unloading at the pier, both on the water and on land, and the whole rest of the port's shut down. You can't do anything while that ship's in there. And then as soon as that ship's unloaded, right back out. So it's pretty serious that if you had an explosion on there, it would take out Boston. If it blew up in Boston Harbor, it would take out the city of Boston.
They made bomb for a terrorist.
Exactly. So that's, and you can see, that the preferred way by doing it is pipelines. They're on figure 720, bottom page 243. Tend to do pipelines all over the place. It's the safest way. You don't even know that they're there.
These are the main ones, right? I'm sure there's lots of
Oh,
smaller ones
absolutely.
that they're not showing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's going to be feeder lines going off to each city, each
Down
major
each
city.
street, basically.
What's that?
Down each street, there's going to be a gas line
Right.
for each home.
Yeah, it's pretty. And if you look, there's pictures there for where the receiving terminals are for natural gas on that map. Each one of those pink ships there, red colored ships. And you can see there's not very many. There's only 3 in the UK. Some countries are better about that than others. France has 2, 3, 4, maybe 4. So there's just not much because the infrastructure required to have a gas receiving port. 7.8, rise and fall of North Sea oil and gas. Kind of at that, if you look at that compared to zero oil overall, that's kind of what they see. The figure 7.21 on page 245 is kind of the same thing. You know, they started tapping into that oil. They hit a peak there where they used up all the, or you know, where that's their maximum amount of oil they're going to get out of there, and now it's on a slow decline. Eventually, at some point, it's not going to be worth it monetarily, even though there's still oil there, depending on what oil prices are doing, and they're going to end up capping them off and calling it good. Now, at the same time, this is kind of old data, 2009, so we're looking at 6-year-old data, and there's been some really good new technology coming out. Is there more oil in the North Sea that they don't know about? Guaranteed. I guarantee you there is. Now, whether or not it's economical to drill for, I don't know. You know, that's something they're going to have to figure out. But all the technology is coming about. All of these zero oil figures just shift dramatically every year. So 6 years old, I wouldn't believe it too much. But you can imagine that we probably are on the decline unless they figure out something amazing. And if they do, you probably hear about it on the news. So there you go. On 720, figure 722, talk a little bit about that, where the oil production was. The peak production was 1999 for oil, and gas was in 2000. And you can see those reserve numbers have fluctuated a bit over the years. Well, did we make more oil during that time? No, they discovered some. And you'll see those little peaks and valleys, like, hey, we discovered more oil. Oh crap, we can't mine it. So there's, yeah, it's there, but we can't get it. So that kind of explains the chart a little bit and why that's kind of all over the road. And you'll see that with any oil field. So we have, what's the new stuff going on in the U.S. for oil? Past 10 years. Where are we seeing all our oil? Fracking. There's a lot of North Dakota, a lot of fracking, but fracking is just purely technique. Allows us to get stuff that we couldn't before, with better technology. Are we discovering more oil in the U.S. all the time? Turns out that we're sitting on a huge, huge, huge puddle of crude oil. That we have a bunch, and I kind of laugh about it because we've, over the past 50 years, we've been kind of at the mercy of OPEC, and you always wonder why. Like, why are we not, I don't understand, why are we buying oil from them if they're being such jerks? Well, if you look at what their reserves are doing, their reserves are just dropping off, right? Eventually they're going to run out of oil, and they're going to have to buy it from us. So from a financial standpoint, it's like, wow, somebody was pretty smart about that.
So they're opening up that oil export. We're working on that right now before the year, after the oil embargo and the law stopped oil exporting in 1975. After the 40 years of working on that right now, we're going to be open exporting all oil.
Yeah. So it is actually kind of brilliant. You do a little kids with Halloween candy. You keep your candy in the basket and you eat all your brothers and sisters' candy. And at the end of the game, guess who's still got their candy left? Other kids are out, you're still fat, dumb, and happy because you still got your bag of candy.
So,
It's a great reference.
What's that?
It's a great reference.
That's the right time of year for it.
But overall, did you or Brad say that the known and predicted oil reserves that are in the ground, half of that has been extracted worldwide?
Well, we don't know.
No.
Half of the known oil has been extracted, yes. But
Not some calculation of total. But
correct, we have no idea
There's
what
no
the total is.
calculation. You have to find it, know it's there.
You know, every year when we discover it, it's like, okay, hey, how much oil do we have? When I can do all the math for it, before I can even get the equation done, they find some more oil. So it's pretty difficult. You're definitely shooting in a moving target there. I don't know if there is a right answer. I don't think that Brad's way off in that assumption, that we could probably assume that we have extracted about half of what's there. But, you know, for all we know,
Or they can prove that wrong by finding big pockets somewhere.
yeah, literally, I saw one, it was a couple of years ago, I'm surprised it was not advertised more, you didn't see more in the news, in the Gulf of Mexico. They discovered a whole new reserve down there that's the size of a third of the United States. Literally, we run that one oil pocket, we run the United States for like 500 years. So at current rates. So it's not like it's like little baby discoveries where we're only going to find, you know, a pocket of oil that'll provide, you know, fuel for the United States for 300 days. There are some major, huge discoveries that we're finding just with the new technology.
Well, there's such huge chunks of land that we probably haven't even checked between Antarctica and all the different spots that are really tough to get to, that with better technology, better equipment, could potentially be accessible.
Right. Yep. So, and I think what it comes down to is two different things, and then I guess we'll go right into that. 7.9. Why are oil and gas so special? Well, we already know the high energy density. We've already talked about that. They're cleaner than coal. By how much? Kind of depends on the technology, and exactly what you're burning, but they are better. Convenience is huge. That's why gasoline is king right now, is because of convenience of it. There's just not, can we make a pure electric car that will get us where we want to go? Yeah. Is it convenient? Nope. Not like gasoline is.
It's already set up gas stations.
Yep. Yeah, all the infrastructure is already there. Everything is there for that to be our fuel of choice. It's easy to move around, and it's cheap.
When you go to new technology and all of our gas running vehicles have been obsolete. You know, that's another big thing. All the vehicles on the road are gas using vehicles, you know. Every single person would have to come up with a new vehicle.
There's a lot of depreciation.
Yeah.
The money invested for people.
Oh yeah.
You
And it's gonna
buy a
be-
$40,000 truck, and all of a sudden you convert to electric cars, and there goes.
Yeah. And it's not going to be instant, right? We know that it's not going to be like, okay, tomorrow everybody's going to drive electric cars and there's not going to be more gas. We're just not there. Technologically there, we're not there. Society-wise, we're not there.
Well, that's why they're slowly putting hydrogen vehicle stations and stuff in places.
Yeah, we're getting there. In the same way with electric, they just put in the Tesla charging units now all over the place. I'm not sure because I didn't actually drive back to look at it, but I think there's one back behind the McKenzie River Pizza out at Grant Creek. I think it's one of the new Tesla charging stations. I can actually drive in there. It's in the parking lot of whatever hotel that is back there.
But those cars are still using fossil fuels, right? Because their power comes from
Well,
electric power.
it all depends on where that electricity comes from. Me using the car only uses electricity. Where that electricity comes from, yeah, it's probably, there's some coal in there, there's some hydro in there, there's some wind, there's some solar PV, there's a little bit of everything.
But that power plant's probably more efficient than your internal combustion engine in the car. So
Yeah,
you're
absolutely.
utilizing that fossil fuel better to create more energy.
Yeah, if I burn a gallon of gasoline in my car, if I have a really, really, really good gasoline engine car, I'm getting 40 miles per gallon. If I burn that same gallon of gasoline in a fuel plant or in a power plant to create electricity, I guarantee I'm going to get more than 40 miles worth of electricity out of that fuel, depending on the conversion efficiency and everything. But yes, the conversion, and we'll kind of get into that in the next chapter, the conversion by a power plant compared to the conversion that happens under the hood of your car is way, way, way more efficient.
You just mentioned one of the vehicles that gets great gas mileage. How many pickups are out there running 8, 12 miles to the gallon? You know,
And you can smell the gas in their exhaust falling around like a 1975 pickup truck. Yeah, you can actually see the blue smoke coming out. That's different gasoline in the air.
Just wish Tesla wasn't 90 grand.
Yeah, no, we'd all be driving Teslas, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, if it costs the same as a Prius, you bet I'd be driving a Tesla around. I don't know a Prius based on principle, but I'd drive a Tesla in a heartbeat. All right, so it kind of hits on all those points, and we've already covered those in advance. It's easy. I go to the gas station, any gas station, get the right gas for my car, fuel it up, and I can drive from here to Billings, probably on most, even the crappiest fuel mileage, most of those vehicles, and make it from here to Billings, on the fuel. So, but if I try to drive, why is Tesla putting in those charging stations? Why would they put one in Missoula? Have you ever seen a Tesla driving around Missoula?
Heck yeah, there's one that drives back and forth from Hamilton every day.
Is there?
Yeah, I see
Okay.
it every day.
I have seen
waypoints between your major cities to charge up.
Exactly. I have seen a couple of them, but that's all kind of all at Tesla's plan. They're actually putting these things in free of charge. It's great advertising, and they're putting them along the interstates, and they're putting them charge distances away from each other. So, there's one in Spokane, and there's probably one in Coeur d'Alene too, just because I don't think you can make it from Spokane to here on a charge.
so every couple hundred miles, 250, 300 maybe.
Not even that far, because I think they're getting about 200 miles range on them.
Okay.
How long does it take to charge them?
Well, that's another place where the technology's really kicked off. It used to be, 24 hours to charge a car, and even then that's plugged into 240 household power supply. And now these new quick charging, they're talking about technologies, the limiting factor is batteries and how fast they will charge. And they're talking about new batteries that will, literally you can charge your car to go another 200 miles in 10 minutes. Wow. Which now, all of a sudden, that brings into the reality of,
That's a gas station.
yeah, that's a gas station stop.
Use the bathroom, get soda.
Yep. And I think right now, the ones for the Tesla's putting out and installing, I want to say it's about 4 hours.
4 hours.
So even then, 4 hours, 4 hours, I might spend $5 on electricity to go 200 miles. I'm going to spend more than $5 on gasoline to go 200 miles, so it's pretty. And if it's at a hotel, I'll just park my car right there, plug it in, go to sleep, wake up in the morning, get my family breakfast. I'm on the road.
There's a Tesla police car.
Sweet. Conversion technologies. So this is kind of cool because we've actually been doing this for years and years. During World War II, they did this in the UK by they used a different kind of gas because they couldn't get oil. So they were making town gas from coal. We talked about that, where basically you're superheating the coal, not allowing any oxygen in, and it puts off a gas that's combustible. But you look at the picture there in figure 723. Hey, miles on that back. Hey, I'm not sure that I'm going to drive around with a giant freaking gas on the road with my car.
Ball of fire on top of your car.
Throw a cigarette.
I've seen what happened to Hindenburg, and that just doesn't look good. And because it's not compressed at all, that's why you're only getting 20 miles out of that, is because it's not compressed. Today's technology,
Yeah, that was a hard, cylinder, like propane tank.
right. If you look at our hydrogen tanks out here in the hydrogen truck, those are rated at 5,000 psi. which is huge, but you're loading your hydrogen in there at 4,000 psi. Those two tanks, I don't know how to describe the size of them. You just have to look at them. They're about 4 feet long, probably a foot and a half, 2 feet in diameter. So I don't know what they can be quantity-wise. Probably 30 gallons liquid-wise, 25 gallons liquid-wise. 2 of those tanks will take you a couple hundred miles in a pickup truck. That's not, exactly the most efficient vehicle ever. That would be a conversion technology. So we can get town gas from oil, because basically oil and coal are very, very similar. Coal is oil is just liquefied coal. They're very similar to it. Has a lot of the same properties. See there, North Dakota on figure 724. North Dakota, they're making synthetic natural gas from coal, which is basically going to be very similar to the town gas. The biomass that we have. Seriously, I think still picking up. The biomass that we just took down to Corvallis burns wood chips through pyrolysis, and it creates the wood gas, which runs a generator, which is a 25 kilowatt generator. This will be hooked right up, you just plug it right into the grid. And that thing burns about 50 pounds of wood chips an hour while putting out 25 kilowatts. So it's pretty impressive. The technology's out there. And it's funny, they actually knew how to do it really well during World War II. We've kind of forgotten that technology, and we're starting to go back to it. The idea behind the biomass, what they wanted to do with it, did not figure out a good way to capture fuel. So what they wanted to capture that gas, it's easiest to use locally. Their idea was, hey, I can take this out to a logging camp. They've got all kinds of scrap material there. All we need is a shredder, which they're going to have anyhow. We'll shred this material. We'll burn the wood chips. The electricity will power this camp. Where there is no electrical grid. And the idea behind it is fantastic.
So you could essentially build one of these off grid.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but rather than burning it in your house just for heat, you could create electricity.
Right. And there was actually something that you can also get a biodiesel. There was a project here about 2 years ago where they had a rig that through pyrolysis, they were taking beetle kill trees and creating diesel fuel.
Really?
The problem with the technology, they're getting a biodiesel. The problem with the technology is they were using about 3 gallons of regular diesel fuel to create 1 gallon of biodiesel. Which is okay, I mean, you're going to have that starting out. It makes sense that starting out it's not going to be the most efficient thing ever. But what they were doing, they were using diesel fuel for superheating the wood chips to get the biodiesel out of them. Well, you need to find a better technique of doing that, and that's what they're working on. It's just the development system. But if you could find a system that did that and gave you a better ratio, a return ratio, say if I burned half a gallon of diesel fuel and it gave me 2 gallons of biodiesel, wow, that's a great deal, right? Now I need a tanker truck out there in the woods to come out there once a day and empty that tank and haul it into town, and we're in business.
Yeah, that's a 4-to-1 return as opposed to a 3-to-1 loss.
Exactly. So it's just the developing technology that we're working on doing there. And it's actually really good when you look at on page 254, some of these technologies of, we've already determined burning coal was bad. We don't like that, right? We really don't want to do that. But if we can turn it to liquid, if we can turn it to town gas, we can turn it into other useful products without releasing all that CO2. It's a great idea. I saw one last year. Once again, I think these things get buried pretty quickly by big oil because they don't want people to know. some guys at, I want to say it was Ohio State University, figured out a system of burning coal, and but it was a pyrolysis system, and it used iron pellets, which we have plenty of. That's pretty easy to obtain, and it gave off 99% less emissions than even our cleanest coal burning systems. And literally, it was putting out 1% of the carbon that our current system uses. Needless to say, that one you're not raving about that. We'll talk about that. Probably it's affecting it. Yep. So we're figuring it out, but there are some techniques out there, and we definitely want to look at. But what's the downside of converting oil or converting coal to gases and other kinds of fuel, or converting oil into some other type of fuel? What's the issue with that? Well, yeah, it's definitely a loss. We know it's going to be a loss, but you're still using fossil fuels. I'm using it for a different purpose, but if I'm using coal-made natural gas with a little bit of a loss, there's still an end to coal. We can see that finish line. Probably not in our lifetimes, but we can see that finish line. So there's still a downside that you're still using fossil fuels. And I'm going to kill the recording right now, and we'll move ahead.